So I'm sitting out in the boat today, thinking about sockeye fishing, getting ready for my trip to the Brewster Pool here at the start of July. And I know it's early June. It's June 6th. And so why am I thinking about Brewster Pool already and why? Because I'm freaking excited. Sockeye are moving up the river system. The thermal barrier is getting in place as we speak right now. It's not quite there yet, but it's super close. And I wanted to go over and talk about 3 things I wish that I knew before I ever went to Brewster to fish for the first time. Welcome back to another Walking on Water fishing tutorial. Let's get into the Brewster Pool and 3 things that I wish I knew before I went there. All right, so we're going to start out here on the computer itself, and we're going to take a look at Brewster Pool on Google Earth. And so we have the town of Brewster right here. You move up the Okanagan River a little bit, and you have a few towns along the way. You have Okanagan, and then you have Omak. And so the first thing that I want to say that I didn't know before I ever went to Brewster Pool is just the limited amount of space to stay. If you're planning a multi-day trip to the Brewster Pool, you might want to look really early because the availability is going to run out purely because of the amount of space that's just not available for people to actually stay. Next, we're going to move into the actual Brewster Pool itself. As you can tell, Brewster is a large area. The pool, it's Lake Petros, and the actual lake itself is pretty large. As you can imagine, we're zoomed really far out, right? So as my cursor goes around here, you can tell that this is a huge area, okay? Tons of places to fish. Look at it in scale of this dock right here. If we zoom out, how large this body of water is. So you can imagine with 300 plus thousand fish coming up and stopping in this pool, that's going to mean one thing. Tons and tons and tons of people are going to come to Brewster to fish this pool for sockeye salmon. Now, here on Google Earth, you have a boat ramp, one single boat ramp, and you can see that there's limited amount of parking and space. Now, people park up and down where my cursor is, up and down the road, so on and so forth. All these parking spots back here, as well as over here. But if you want to come out and fish Brewster Pool, the first thing that I wish that I knew before fishing Brewster Pool is you need to be awake 3 hours before you think you should be awake to be 2 hours early. In other words, you basically need to sleep on the frickin' water. Brewster Pool is a combat fishery, and it is extremely fun to fish. I'm not taking anything away from it, but there is limited space to stay, as well as there is very limited space to put your boat in. So if you're going to fish Brewster Pool, the first thing that I wish that I knew is to be up extremely early. Let's get into the second 2 things. Thing number 2 that I wish that I knew before ever fishing the Brewster Pool, and now some people might say this is personal preference, but I'm going to use this as one of the things that I wish I knew prior because I feel like it's somewhat important to me, and it's not that important, but it still helped me catch a little bit more fish, and you're not inconveniencing anybody else while you're out there on the water. Because it is a combat fishery, it just makes more sense. So I do have 2 downriggers, one here, one on the other side, on the little Walking on Watercraft, okay? But I also have the rod holders, okay? And so last year, if you see in my videos when I was fishing sockeye, I was utilizing downriggers, but I wasn't utilizing them with the actual downrigger ball and weight on there. I was just using the rod holder because I didn't have these attachments right here yet, these little Scotty clamp-ons, which are sick. I just had the 2 in the back. And so the number 2 thing that I wanted to talk about that I wish I knew before fishing Brewster Pool, which will make your life just ever so much easier while you're out there on the water, don't use your downriggers. You're not fishing super deep. These fish are pretty close to the surface. You can get away with using 3 to 4 to 5, even 6 ounces of lead. And the cannonballs just make it so much easier to stack your rods on your boat if you have more than one person in there. So if you're going to put your rods up in the front, you want your heavier weight up in the front. So if I'm going to run 6, 4, you know what I mean? I would run my 6s up front and I'd run my 4s in the back. The reason that is because when you're traveling with your boat, that 6 is going to hold almost more like a downrigger ball a lot closer to the boat than the 4 is, right? That 4 is going to separate with line angle pretty far away from the boat out the back. So you're not going to have to worry about tangles or anything like that when you're stacking rods down along your boat. And this is going to help other people out only because the cannonball actually follows your boat super well. The cannonball on your line will travel where your boat's going. You can even basically turn a 360 and those cannonballs are going to drag right there in their line to where a downrigger with a long setback, if somebody goes past that and they're turning and you're turning and your downrigger ball gets hooked on their stuff, it's going to be a lot more of a mess that you're going to have to help clean up with a downrigger out there versus using cannonballs. Now, this is kind of an etiquette thing as well as an efficiency thing. Super fast to throw in a cannonball that's hooked to a VIP line lock versus reel up the downriggers every single time. So etiquette and efficient, that's my number 2 thing before fishing Brewster. Use cannonballs, don't use downriggers. The number 3 thing that I wish that I knew before I fished the Brewster Pool, and yes, it has to do with the motor itself, is I have been a kokanee fisherman for a very long time, and I've also fished sockeye for a very long time as well too. But one thing that I didn't know, because I fished for kokanee so much before getting into sockeye fishing, is I was traveling 1.3, 1.4 when I first got to the Brewster Pool for the first time. And then I quickly learned that it's not really going to be 1.3, or even 1 to 1.2. It's actually really weird. We found down there at the Brewster Pool that the best speed for catching these sockeye, a bigger kokanee, an ocean run kokanee, is with this motor right here, 25 horse, but this piece of equipment right here, the trolling plate. We have a little trolling plate on the 25. And that is, we were traveling 1.9 miles an hour. And that's something that I never would have guessed when I was down there fishing for sockeye at Brewster, is that you'd be traveling so slow to catch an ocean run fish to where you're on the lake and you're fishing for kokanee and you're only traveling 1.2 to 1.3 miles an hour. So it's kind of interesting. That is the third thing that I wish that I knew before traveling to Brewster is speed, because it took us a couple days to dial in speed. You know what I mean? You get down there, you're super confident, you're like, oh, kokanee, 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 but these are sockeye, and they traveled up a river system, so you'd think that their muscles, everything, just stronger than a lake fish, but in all actuality, they like those slower speeds. Something about the 0.9 mile an hour speed really entices those fish to want to bite. And so, you can utilize something like a trolling plate like this right here on your motor, or you can go up here, and we'll go around to the other side. And you can utilize a drift sock like that right there. And now, the reason I have it connected to the bow versus back there is because, yes, this 30-inch drift sock controls my speed very well, and it's attached to the front. It also helps in the wind. It helps keep the bow of the boat, when the waves are popping, it helps keep the bow of the boat a lot more level when you're chilling fishing. So utilize a drift sock to get yourself down to 0.9 miles an hour. And speed, guys. Speed is the third thing that I wish that I knew before fishing the Brewster Pool. And there's 2 good methods on how exactly to get yourself down to that perfect speed of 0.9 to 1 mile an hour. Now, I'm not saying you can't catch fish at 1.2 or 1.3 miles an hour, but after years of fishing there, the best speed that I have found is 0.9 miles an hour. These are 3 things that I wish that I knew before I had ever put my boat into the water on Brewster Pool. Things that I hope that will help you on your day 1 down there. If it's your first day 1, maybe it's not. But hopefully these few little tips and tricks will help you guys find a nice, smooth day 1. Because I know, trust me, I know better than anyone. You go on a trip, you plan it all out, you're not quite sure of a few things, you get down there, day 1 turns into a little bit less fishing and a lot more trying to figure everything out. So thank you guys so much for tuning in to this episode of Walking on Water Fishing. God bless you. I will see you on the Brewster Pool.